Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here. And welcome to our Smooch reading. And our very talented authors here are going to read a kissing scene from one of their books. This is going to be a good time, so sit down and relax. I want to give some reminders about Zoom. The best way to look at this and watch this is to set your screen to gallery so you can see everybody. And the chat roll is live for your comments, so feel free to put in any questions in your in the chat box, and I'll get to those near the end of it after everybody's had an opportunity to read. And if you have any questions, please pop them into the Q&A box too, and we'll hope to have a great time and take questions from our audience in a little bit. This session's about 50 minutes long, so we're going to get this party started. Our first reader is going to be Renee Roman. Renee Roman lives in upstate New York with her fur baby, Maisie, and enjoys an adventure-filled life. Her book, Body Language, was a 2022 Golden Crown Literary Society finalist, and Escorted won the 2023 GCLS Erotic Novel and Award. I was so excited for you, Renee. Her next book out this spring is Stranger in the Sand, and she's currently writing When Hearts Collide. You can find her books at the Bold Strokes bookstore. And you're off, Renee.
Hello, welcome. I'm going to be reading from Chance Encounter today. And I'll just give you a little background and then I'll get started. After winning a trip to Fiji, Sky Roberts had her doubts about going. The annoying travel agent, Drew Mitchell, insisted on being her personal tour guide. After dinner to discuss the details, Drew and Sky are standing at her door. Thank you for dinner. I hope you enjoyed my company as much as the food. Drew's mouth moved into an almost smile. Not quite a smirk, but close enough that Sky witnessed a flash of the side of Drew that made her want to slap her. The food was excellent. Maybe it was cruel to leave Drew hanging. That was the part of her action she didn't understand. Sky wasn't normally crude or insensitive. There was something in Drew's demeanor that pushed her buttons and made her act out of character. So that's the way you want to play this. Drew leaned her shoulder against the wall and folded her arms. To Sky, it looked like this was a game Drew played often, and she wasn't sure if she was pissed or jealous of the women Drew played with. I'm not playing at all. You're alternately thoughtful and egotistical. I'm not sure which one I'm going to get at any given moment, so you tell me. She didn't want to get worked up over Drew's childish games, but she was more upset with herself for being turned on by the bad boy persona. Which do you want to see more of? Drew pushed off, invading her space. She was a few inches shorter than Sky, but what she lacked in height she made up for in attitude. God help her, Drew was hot, and she knew it. How many women have you tried that line on? The biting edge of her voice betrayed her lack of control and gave space to what really was going on inside Sky's head and body. Hundreds. Drew stepped closer until the barest of inches separated them. Sky pulled air into her lungs. How many times was it successful? She could feel the heat from Drew's body as it singed her exposed skin. Hundreds. Before she could respond, Drew was on her. Her fingers snaked into Sky's hair as she wrapped her arm around her waist and pulled her against Drew's firm body. When her lips pressed to Sky's, she whimpered. She hadn't known how desperately she'd wanted them until the moment she felt them, tasted them. How many women had been kissed by her? It didn't matter. It was just her and Drew kissing outside on the landing, not in bed where she wanted her. It had been months since she'd had a date that included physical intimacy. The overnight buck that she walked away from in the morning by telling herself the woman still asleep in the bed wasn't the one in her dreams. The sex had been necessary and nice, but she hadn't felt anything except gratitude when she left. Drew broke the connection by tugging Sky's head away. Good night, Sky. Drew turned toward her car, taking with her those damnable lips and that cocky smile that simultaneously made her crave more and wish she'd never bought the damn raffle ticket. Her lips still tingled. Her skin was still flushed with the heat of Drew's body and her own fantasy of Drew making her feel more than she had ever felt in her life. Would she tease and taunt until Sky begged for release, begged for more, giving in to the primal pleasures she'd never let herself enjoy because it wasn't proper behavior for a woman of her status? Imagine the scandal of the oversexed, kinky school teacher exposed. That was a side of her that she'd never entertained. It lurked in the background like a dirty secret she wouldn't deny if ever discovered. The thought of traveling halfway around the world might prove the opportunity that had eluded her all these years. Who would know her in Fiji? Who would care what she did in the privacy of her room? Taking the trip by herself wouldn't have been as tempting as taking it with the hot, albeit arrogant tour guide who had just kissed her like she owned Sky. Definitely wishful thinking on her part, and whether she wanted to admit it or not, Drew had shaken her predictable world to its core. Thank you.
Sorry, I was having a hard time unmuting. That was wonderful, Renee. Thank you. Now I want to go
Thank you.
to I have a question for you, and then we'll get on to our next reader. But your characters in your erotic story Redemption, which is not the story you read from, are at a masquerade ball. Is there an additional sizzle to a kiss you don't know who the other person is?
Um, I think it's probably a different kind of sizzle. It's like you don't have any predisposed idea of who this person is or what they like or what they want or how are you two going to interact. It's just about the kiss, the moment. And I think it's freeing a lot more than knowing the person that you're going to be kissing.
Oh, that's a good point. That's a very good point. I didn't even think about that. I don't. Thank you. Thank you very much, Renee.
You're welcome.
Our next reader is going to be Nan Campbell. Hi, Nan.
Hi.
Campbell grew up on the Jersey Shore, where she first discovered her love of romance novels as a kid, spending her summers at the beach reading stories that were wholly inappropriate for her age, and I can relate. She was and continues to be a sucker for a happy ending. She loves karaoke, which is unfortunate for anyone within range of her singing voice. Nan and her wife live in New York City, where they struggle to balance their natural homebody tendencies with all the amazing things the city has to offer. Thank you for being here, Nan.
Oh,
Uh,
happy to be here.
yeah, definitely. It's your turn. Go ahead and read for us. I'm looking forward to it.
Okay. I'm reading from Hot Honey Love, which came out in late 2024. And Hot Honey Love is an opposites attract story between Steph, she's an exuberant chef, and Mallory, she's a reserved filmmaker who also happens to be a really selective eater. They couldn't be more opposite. The scene that I'm going to read is it happens at the end of a long, eventful day on the stoop of a Hoboken brownstone. It's not their first kiss, and it's not a typical kissing scene. When they got to Steph's building, Mallory sat on the stoop and put her backpack in her lap. I know you probably want to call it a night, but I've got something for you first. Not a Christmas present, I hope. I haven't gotten anything for you yet. No, nothing like that. It was just something I wanted to do for you as a tribute to this good day. A good day for both of us. Steph sat beside her on the steps. I wasn't sure what to get you. I'm sure there are plenty of kitchen gadgets or clothes, maybe jewelry or perfume, nail polish. I don't know. Anything other than what I've got for you. I'm thinking right now that any of those would have probably been better. Mallory withdrew from her backpack something loosely wrapped in packing material. She removed the bubble wrap and brown packing paper that surrounded it to reveal a resealable, gallon-sized plastic bag of potato chips. With a bit of ceremony, She held it out with both hands, bowing her head a little, and handed it over to Steph. Instead, I got you this. This was Mallory's gift. There had to be a reason this bag of chips was wrapped so carefully. Mallory never did anything without a purpose. Steph held it up and examined it in the dim light cast by the street lamp. Wait, were these all? They're all folded chips. Every single one of them, unless any have broken in transit. And they're Utz originals. Of course, those are your favorite. But how did you? Let's just say my apartment is a mess right now. 9 open bags of chips, and one of them I opened way too hard and it exploded all over the kitchen floor. I need a better vacuum. You took out all the folded ones? I didn't know how many bags it would take to fill up one Ziploc bag of the best folded chips. Each one went through my stringent rating system. I inspected every single one. These all possess grade A folds. Plus, I have 6 more bags that aren't open. I can't eat them all. If you know anybody who wants potato chips, you bought 15 bags of chips? Steph moved closer. In 3 stores. And just so you know, I wore latex gloves so they're not contaminated by my finger germs. For me? She couldn't stop the smile or the tears that flooded her eyes. Yes. Oh, Steph. Mallory reached out and brushed her thumb across Steph's cheek, taking her tear with it. It's too cold to cry. But why? And when? After your meeting? Because I got home and I was standing in my apartment thinking about the meeting. She looked up at the sky. I shouldn't be telling you this. You have to tell me. Please tell me. Mallory gazed at her. You said we could meet up later. And I had all these hours until you were done working, so I thought, do something nice for Steph. She kissed you right before your meeting, and that's why it went well. What? I. You wished me luck, and you kissed me. Mallory overrode what Steph was going to say. I was calm all throughout the meeting, and I made my points and answered all the questions and stated my case for why they should invest in me. It went perfectly, and it was because of your good luck kiss. So thank you. There's no way you're giving me credit for that. You made it happen all by yourself. I don't think so. She looked away. What would make Steph happy? I asked myself. And one thing I know, you like the chips that are folded over themselves, the extra crunch, the dipping strength. Yes, Steph wiped at her eyes and laughed. Mallory turned back, and Steph forgot to breathe when she saw the intensity in her eyes. Because if all I ever get to be is your friend, I want to be the best friend possible. The one who makes you happy and makes sure you know you're worth sifting through a million bags of potato chips for the exact kind that you like. That kiss made me really happy. I wanted to return the favor. And you're worth a million good luck kisses. Steph put the bag on the step above and reached for Mallory. It only took a half second before their lips became warm, and everything that was good right now was expressed in that kiss. How could this be wrong? Her hands cupped Mallory's freezing cheeks. Their noses bumped. You're making it really hard for me to hold back. I want so much more than a kiss. I know. I want that too. I don't even care that you won't let me touch you. I will, Steph. She pulled back. What did she say? Mallory nodded. Hearing you announce to the world today that we're only friends, it sounds absolutely wrong. I want all of you, and I want to give all of myself to you. But how are we going to? I'm going to try. It's all I can do. I don't want to make you do anything you don't want to do. Steph reached for the lapel of Mallory's jacket, smoothing her fingers over the stiff, cold leather. That's the thing. I do want to. My therapist used to say that a time will come when doing the thing will be more important than not doing it. She leaned into Steph. This is the time. Steph wrapped her arm around her. We don't have to do this tonight. It's enough that you want to. It's not enough for me. She tilted her head up. Her lips were so close. My whole life has been either one thing or the other, conviction or doubt. Conviction is short bursts. It got me to finish my film. It made me enter into the competition in the first place. Doubt is constant. It colors everything. She gripped Steph's shoulder through her coat. I have doubts about everything except for you. I know you won't hurt me. Never. Steph kissed Mallory. Her lips were right there, irresistible. It was gentle and sweet and tender, with a promise of heat that seemed only a moment away. and Steph wanted 1,000 more just like it.
That was awesome, Nan. Thank you very much for that. I thought
Thank
that
you.
was funny. And the chips, I mean,
Who doesn't like a folded chip?
I know, right? I'm all about them. So I have a question for you. Despite your hate for cooking, you wrote this book about food. And how does food and or cooking factor into other kissing scenes in your story?
Well, this story, I think it really speaks to like my upbringing. I grew up in an Italian Catholic family, just like my character Steph, the chef. And all of my sisters, my parents, they were all really good cooks. And somehow that gene just kind of passed me by. I'm terrible. And, even following a recipe is a challenge for me. But I think like when it comes to kissing and intimacy, food is a very good way into those kinds of things because when you share food with a person, it that is an act of intimacy in itself. So yes, I do dislike cooking, but I don't mind eating. And I think that those are two things that go well together, food and intimacy.
It's so true. Some of the best scenes in movies revolve around food, so that's pretty. When Harry Met Sally, that new commercial that came out.
Yeah.
My gosh. Okay. One of the best scenes. So,
Yep.
okay. Thank you so much, Nan. I love that scene. Next up is Claire Forsyth. Claire Forsyth lives just outside of Belfast, Northern Ireland, and she's probably tired. It's the middle of the night for you, right?
It is. No, it's just after six. Just after
Oh, just
six.
after six. Okay,
Yeah,
we're
we're
good.
okay. Yep.
Okay. She lives with her partner Mary and their pets Charlie the dog, Midnight the cat, and Jazz the goldfish. Claire owns a coffee shop, which keeps her busy and well tapped up on caffeine. She likes flat whites specifically. Claire has loved words and books ever since she was a little and has always been her ambition to write. After finding herself with some unexpected free time in her hands in lockdown during the pandemic, she decided to follow her dream and start writing. Now that she started, she never wants to stop. Right on. There you go, Claire.
Thank you. So I am going to be reading from my newest release, The Roommate. It was released last month, and it is about Jess and Sydney who have a chance encounter on the train, have an instant connection, and end up going their separate ways. But fate pulls them back together whenever they end up living in the same house. Um, Jess has a boyfriend, has never been with a woman before. Is very confused by all these feelings and sort of tries to fight against those feelings. Sydney, on the other hand, is very heart on her sleeve. Makes it clear that she's interested in Jess, and this is whenever Jess basically finally comes to her senses and they finally get together. So here we go. Jess was done with waiting. What had she been waiting for? The perfect time? The perfect place? Well, a romantic date on Valentine's Day certainly fitted that bill. And those things were great, but the reason why they were so great was all down to the person, to Sydney. Because the truth was, Sydney made everything great. And Jess realised that the time and place didn't really matter. All that mattered was her. The perfect person had been right in front of Jess this whole time, patiently waiting for her to come to her senses. And at last she had. Jess couldn't ignore her feelings for a second longer. She didn't want to ignore them. She wanted Sydney. She wanted her in every way possible, and it felt so good to admit it to herself and out loud. That didn't mean she wasn't still scared or nervous. She was both. But Sydney made Jess feel safe and cared for, and that was enough to quash any lingering doubts or worries running through Jess's head. They both remained quiet as they walked towards home, not because Jess didn't want to speak to Sydney, but because she wanted to do so much more, and it was all that she could think about. Jess walked ahead into the house, shedding her coat and hanging it up as Sydney clicked the door shut behind them and did the same. Jess checked the bowl. Chloe's keys were gone. She listened anyway for any signs of Chloe being home to make sure, but the house was silent except for the jingling of Sydney's keys. When she heard them hit the bowl with a clink, Jess turned around. She closed the gap between Sydney and her in two small steps. As Jess looked up into Sydney's soft, questioning gaze, Her heart felt like it was going to burst out of her chest. This was it. There were no more obstacles. She was removing the lines. She lowered her gaze to Sydney's lips, lips that Jess had only been able to touch for brief seconds before, but now the shackles were gone and there was no reason to stop. So she allowed herself to look freely, to indulge, not caring that her intention was vividly on display for Sydney to see, because Jess wanted Sydney to see how much she wanted her. She reached up and gently ran her thumb across Sydney's bottom lip. I love your lips. Did you know that? She asked with a smile, mimicking the moment that she had admitted that to Sydney on New Year's Eve. Jess watched Sydney's throat move as she swallowed. She looked at Jess with recognition. You remember that? Her voice was husky. Jess loved it when she made Sydney's voice go like that. Of course I remember. It's the truth. I meant it. Sydney's brow furrowed as if Jess's admission hit deep. She let out a heavy sigh and dropped her gaze, like she finally dared to hope. How much restraint must Sydney have had while she was free, yet Jess remained untouchable? How had she been able to wait so long to do this? Jess couldn't wait for another minute. She leaned forward and pressed her lips against Sydney's, much like she had on Christmas, only this time Jess didn't pull away. Like before, she took a few seconds to revel in the softness of Sydney's lips against hers, but then she needed more. Jess deepened the kiss, their lips moving slowly and softly brushing against one another in what felt like perfectly rehearsed choreography, only they didn't need to rehearse because this thing between them was the most natural thing in the world. They were made to do this. Sydney moaned and pushed Jess up against the nearest wall, only breaking their kiss for a second to look at Jess with sheer hunger in her eyes. Well, if Sydney was hungry, Jess was starving. She grabbed Jess's top and pulled her back in. This time Sydney's mouth crashed against hers, and it was Jess's turn to moan. She pushed her tongue into the inviting warmth of Sydney's mouth, and Sydney's tongue met it with its own gentle caress and expert movement. Then Jess's mind became an evocative blur. She was hyper-aware of every move, every touch, and every breath she gasped for before she dived right back into Sydney again. But in that moment, if someone had asked her what her name was, she wouldn't have had a clue. All Jess knew was Sydney and how Sydney was making her feel. How had she ever thought that she wouldn't want this, that she might not enjoy it? Jess could kiss Sydney forever. Thank you.
That was awesome. I love it. I love first kisses with people like roommates. They've been around each other. They're living so close together. And that leads me to my question. Your main characters are roommates. And do you think that near strangers living together heightens the tension of the first kiss?
Yeah, because I think you're on that whole journey with them because they're strangers at the start and then you see their connection building as the story goes on and they can't get away from each other. So there's all those near misses whenever they're both in the kitchen in the middle of the night, they're both in, you're waiting for it to happen, but you're seeing all the reasons why it can't. So I think by the time it actually reaches it, I think the tension, like you're just ready to explode, basically.
Right on, right on. I love that scene. Thank you for reading that.
Oh, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Joe, you're up next. Joe's a former English teacher and current homemaker. Joe lives in an enchanted wood in rural Alabama with her wife and son and a menagerie of animals. She was published twice in her college's literary collection and enjoyed being an educator for 6 years, winning Teacher of the Year in 2020. Jo's writing is often humorous and personal, drawing from her varied life experiences. She pulls from her southern rural upbringing to craft stories about community. Jo, you're up. Let's hear your scene.
Hi. So hard to follow all these amazingly talented authors. So here we go. The novel that I'm going to be reading from is Promises to Protect. It looks like this. It's about a park ranger and a social worker who are both trying to help this sort of alternative community living in the state park. They just have very different ideas about how to do that. This scene, one of the main characters, Skylar, has gotten a flat tire in the rain. And the other main character, Max, rides out to rescue her. And she takes her back home to kind of wait out the storm. So that's where we're starting in at. Max laughed long and hard. She enjoyed Skylar's company very much. As she quieted, she thought she'd try her invitation again. So I know you know about Blue Creek Falls, but there's actually another falls northeast of town. Really? There's not much northeast of town except the Carolinas. Just over the line into South Carolina, there's a wilderness preserve. There's a branch of the Chattooga that runs over falls and into a little blue pool at the bottom. It's very scenic and very secluded. The last part sounded more suggestive than she'd meant, but there it was, and she couldn't take it back. Why are you telling me this? I think you'd like to see it. Skylar considered her with a little smile. Are you asking me on a date? Max's face warmed slightly. I'm asking you on a hike. Skylar set her beer on the table. Yeah, but it feels like more. Max didn't know what to say. It did feel like more. She wanted it to be more. Skylar was captivating and incredibly attractive. She was fun and warm and compassionate, and Max wanted her badly. She couldn't just say those things, though. She didn't want to come on too strong. Would that be a problem if it was more? Max looked at the beer in her hands. No, I don't see that it would. Skylar touched her face softly, and Max lifted her gaze to meet those mesmerizing green eyes. I would like for it to be more. Even though you don't approve of my casual relationships? Skylar smiled in a way that told Max she was teasing. I was out of line judging you before. For the record, Layla and I have had a casual arrangement. It was never serious between us. Oh, Max was relieved. But you've done serious in the past. Skylar nodded. A few times. And I don't mix the two. If I'm serious with someone, I don't have a casual relationship on the side. I'm glad to know that. There was barely a breath of space between them. Max put her beer on the table and closed the gap. It was a tentative kiss at first. Both tested and teased each other until there was no oxygen. Skylar was the first to deepen the kiss, and Max responded eagerly. She stroked along Skylar's jaw tenderly and didn't miss the small shiver that traveled through her body. The moment was cut short, however, by a quick series of events. Lightning lit the sky and thunder crashed loudly as the lights went out. There was a quick scrabble of claws and a squeaking hiss as Shy Guy leapt into Max's lap. The sudden appearance of the skunk startled Skylar, who jumped backward onto the arm of the small sofa and then toppled out of sight. Shit! Max cradled the panicked critter and jumped from the cushions to check on Skylar. Are you okay? Yeah, Skylar mumbled in the darkness as she stood. My ass broke the fall. Again. Max laughed. You could have mentioned you have an anxious cat. I don't have a cat. Skylar frowned. Then what the hell? She stopped talking. That's a skunk. She backed away. What the fuck, Max? This is Shy Guy. It's a long story, but he can't spray you. He's harmless, see? To reiterate her point, Max held him out face first, and he blinked adorably at Skylar. Pulling him close to her chest, she could feel his tiny heart hammering. The storm scared him, but he usually hides under the furniture. I didn't say anything because I didn't think he would show himself. Skylar continued to look at him warily. Am I forgiven? I suppose, Skylar said before settling onto the love seat and taking another swig of her beer. She studied the skunk. He is cute. Is he a pet? As she took down her kerosene lamp from above her wardrobe and placed it on the coffee table, Max explained about the couple planning to dump him at the picnic area. It didn't occur to them that they couldn't take a tame animal and put it in the wilderness. She looked at Shy Guy, who'd fallen asleep on the cushion. The light of the lamp burned steadily, and there was a faint smell of fuel in the air. It was very cozy. Truthfully, they just might not have cared, Max. Skylar tentatively stroked the skunk as it snoozed. Most people don't have the compassion for wildlife and critters that you do. Most people don't have the compassion for mentally ill alcoholics that you do either. Skylar smiled sadly. I didn't always.
I love the skunk.
And
That is so awesome.
not the traditional kiss scene, but little bit of humor in there.
Yeah, but kiss is interrupted by lightning and thunder. That's kind of, that says a lot. That's good foreshadowing, huh? I love that skunk. So thank you for reading for us. I have a question for you. Your story features an enemies to lovers kind of trope. One moves to town and isn't the kind of person that the other would be friends with. How do you set up the kiss if they don't like each other despite the attraction they seem to have?
So I think that when you come in contact with someone that you're automatically kind of like, nah, that's not my person. Everything is heightened. Like you're watching them, you're very aware of them. There's this hyper arousal, whether it's negative or good. And they also kind of upfront see each other's flaws. And so that's kind of the first thing they notice about each other. And so that just, they're able to kind of get out in front of that quickly. And much like when you're in competitions with someone, you start noticing the good things about them too, like what they're good at and how they handle this situation. And so I feel like you're watching them so closely that you get to know a genuine like side of them, and you get to earn respect for them, and that sort of adds to like your attraction for them, maybe the capability that you see in them.
I kind of like that. That's cool. You set the bar pretty low for somebody like that, so it can only get better. That's number one. But being able to see, looking for those things, that's a cool way to look at it. Thanks a lot for your reading. I loved it. I'm gonna have to read that book. I haven't gotten to that one yet, but thanks a lot. Last but not least is Ursula Klein. Ursula is originally from Maryland, where she grew up and attended university. She taught ESL in Europe after college, then returned to the United States and pursued graduate studies in New York. She has since lived in Tennessee, Texas, and Georgia before landing in her current location, Wisconsin. Ursula loves reading fantasy, romance, science fiction, and mysteries. She also enjoys crocheting, traveling, and spending time with her wife and young sons. She is a huge fan of dressing up in costumes, loves celebrating Halloween, and was probably a witch in a past life. I think I was too. So it's your turn, Ursula. Have fun.
All right, great. I'm going to be reading from my second book, Winter's Spell, which came out last year. And in Winter's Spell, Roxy was one of the main characters, and she's in Provincetown on Cape Cod doing seasonal work and was also attending her best friend Hazel's wedding. At the wedding, she unexpectedly bumps into her old college roommate, Tessa. Tessa always had a crush on Roxy, but had never told her. Now, 9 years have passed, and they are both on Cape Cod for the winter. They start hanging out, though their courtship is interrupted in many ways by Tessa's work on a play she's putting on, as well as a stranded mermaid named Mo that Roxy is helping this winter. Tessa's imposing ex Lisa is also the lead in the play, and Roxy needed to make sure first that Tessa wasn't still in love with her. She isn't. So finally, Tessa has a night off, and she invites Roxy to come over for dinner of pierogi that her mom sent her, and some cookies she baked from scratch for Roxy. This scene is pretty close to halfway through the book, and Roxy's attraction to Tessa has been building for a while now. Part of the reason she hasn't kissed Tessa sooner, though, is because in the past she'd rushed into relationships and it never worked out. She knows Tessa is special and she doesn't want to mess things up. Tessa cleared their plates away and brought out a small plate with homemade chocolate chip cookies. Now these, she said proudly, I did make. What? When did you ever have time? Roxy took a bite and savored the sweet and salty flavors of the cookie. I like to stress bake, said Tessa. She grabbed a cookie for herself and took a big bite. How does that work? It would never in a million years occur to Roxy to bake when feeling stressed. Wasn't baking a stressful activity? It's like when I'm working on a big project and it's going to be several months before I have the results. It's nice to bake something fast and easy that I've done a million times and I know will turn out perfectly. Like these cookies. It's very satisfying, Tessa said with a smile that made Roxy's insides go flip-flop. Whatever the reason, they are delicious, said Roxy. Clearly, you've inherited some of your mom's talents in the kitchen. Someday, hopefully, I can cook for you myself, said Tessa, her expression even warmer than before. And if it weren't for the fact that Roxy's hands and lips were covered in greasy cookie crumbs, she would have leaned in for a kiss right then. I'd love that, said Roxy. I'm afraid I can't reciprocate. Unless we go camping. In that case, you should see me with the Dutch oven. I can work some magic there. I just bet, said Tessa. And the words came out with something more than flirtatious banter, something hotter, full of desire. She leaned in towards Roxy, and Roxy's breath caught in her throat. Ring! The sound of an old-timey telephone jarred them apart before their lips could touch, and Tessa, flustered, jumped up to see to her phone that was so loudly ringing. I'm so sorry, she said to Roxy. I have to answer. I'll be just a minute. Roxy nodded her understanding. Her heart was pounding and she couldn't speak. Had they really almost kissed? Yes. There was no denying it. Did she still want to kiss Tessa? Yes, of course. And there was nothing wrong with that. They could kiss and take it slow, right? Tessa went into the bedroom with the phone, and before she closed the door behind her, Roxy could hear Joy's distinctive voice on the line discussing something technical about the theater production. She breathed a sigh of relief. She was glad it wasn't Lisa. That woman made her nervous as hell. She believed Tessa when she said she wasn't interested in Lisa. That much was clear, especially given their almost kiss. But that only made Roxy more worried about her. What if Lisa realized that they were involved? Would she make Roxy's life miserable? She didn't know Lisa well enough to know how vengeful she was, and she didn't want to find out. To keep herself busy, Roxy cleared the dishes off the table and started cleaning up around the kitchen. Growing up, she'd been a total slob, constantly getting in trouble for the mess in her room. She'd often used the various sports she participated in as a teen as an excuse for not having time for chores. It was her best friend Hazel and her small business that had made her understand the value and importance of keeping spaces tidy and pitching in to help others with chores too. By the time Tessa emerged from the bedroom, their dishes were done, the remaining food were in the counter in the fridge, in the container in the fridge, and the pots and pans were drying in the rack. Tessa found Roxy wiping down the countertops and table with a sponge. When she saw Tessa, she threw the sponge in the sink and dried her hands on a kitchen towel. Wow, said Tessa, taking it all in. Thanks so much. You didn't have to do that. Roxy smiled. I wanted to. Tessa took a step toward Roxy and, as though they'd planned it, as though it was the most natural thing in the world, as though they did this all the time, they were wrapped in each other's arms, kissing. The kiss was both hot and tender, and Roxy felt as though her feet were no longer on the ground. Tessa's lips were soft but passionate, eager to explore Roxy's. Pleasure coursed through her like hot honey, making her entire body heavy with desire. She reveled in the feeling of Tessa's body on hers, pushing together, Tessa's hands on Roxy's back, holding her close. Roxy marveled at how new a kiss could feel, and yet how completely natural. She felt warm from inside out, and when Tessa deepened the kiss, she felt her entire body go into overdrive, her heart in her throat, her whole body on fire. After what felt like an eternity, but also far too short a time, they broke apart. Wow, said Tessa again, this time her voice quieter, breathier. Wow is right, said Roxy, and they both laughed. Tessa hugged her again and let her head rest on Roxy's chest. This feels so right, said Tessa into Roxy's flannel shirt. Thank you.
Oh my gosh, I'd kiss anybody who did my dishes too, but that was
Right?
yeah. I like that. Another interrupted kiss almost, so I loved it. I loved it. And the cookies as an opening was got me my attention right away. So thank you very much. That's a great scene.
Thank you.
So I have a question for you as well, Ursula. Let's see. How do you decide how long to wait before the characters have their first scene in the book?
Well, so I don't know. I definitely am a waiter. I like a lot of kind of waiting and wanting and build up. And I know sometimes that readers get frustrated with that. They just want, they want the kiss sooner. And when I was getting ready this scene to read, I was paging through and I was like, wow, it's really like kind of late. It's like in the middle of the book. So maybe my next one, they need to kiss sooner. But I'm a big fan of like the long-awaited romance, like Persuasion by Jane Austen is one of my favorite stories because there's that longing, that yearning, that waiting, right? And so I wanted there to be some build up. And so I feel like in both Enchanted Autumn and Winter's Spell, the first kiss comes like about halfway through. And so the characters really want it and they're really ready. So that's kind of where I've been coming from lately, but maybe I'll change that in the next one.
You can if you want to, but the slow burn is some people just love that slow burn.
I love that.
But an equal amount love that, jump into bed right away. So, it's it depends on what you want, but I love the slow burn too. I really do. Thank you all for your readings. They were so wonderful. I do have a question in the Q&A. and I'm going to put it out to everybody. And I'm going to start, I'll go in the same order that we did in the reading. So the question's from Joni Baszler. How hard or easy is it for you to place the first kiss scene or the first seriously intimate scene in the correct place within the story? So it's real or powerful and the readers believe it and don't feel like it's contrived. So Renee?
Um, I get this question often, actually, and it really depends on the story. I have started an erotic romance with a scene of the two main characters in bed. And it felt right because that's who they were, and that's where they were in their life. And then I've written romantic contemporaries, and it could happen a third of the way. I think the latest I've ever done, like a first intimate relationship, is physical relationship, is about halfway through, and that gave me time to have them work out their issues surrounding that first kiss, like what was keeping them apart. And they had reasons that they didn't want to get involved. Um, but I think it has to be organic because I've actually written in two books a first kiss sex scene and said, this is wrong. These characters are not ready for this. And how is it going to move forward if they're not ready? So I held it back and I put it a couple of chapters later or whenever it felt the right time. So I think it has to be driven by the characters themselves and where they are in their headspace.
That's a great answer. I love that. I love that. How about you, Nan?
Yeah, Renee just gave the perfect answer. It really is about the characters. I've had one of my books, there's no sex until like the very end, and then it's like, whoa, Nelly, all bets are off. This is happening now. But Hot Honey Love, the characters have to really, their journey to intimacy is really fraught, and they get to it sooner than they're ready for. And like what Renee was talking about, they back off after that first experience, and then they kind of have to really negotiate how to approach it again because that first time was not what they expected and not what they wanted. And they had to figure out how to make it what they wanted and how it would work for both of them.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I mean, that's an example of it's up to the characters, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great answer. How about you, Claire?
Yeah, again, I'll jump on and say that Renee's was a great answer there. So, but yeah, it depends on the situation. Like in The Roommate, mine was very late again because especially my main character Jess, she was going on such an individual journey with herself that it couldn't have happened before that because she wasn't ready for it. Although the like the chemistry was there, she as a character wasn't actually ready to get into that relationship. So I think like your characters better than anybody and you'll know when it feels organic for them. If it's rushed, I don't think that the readers would buy into it. And again, if it's too long away, then they'll get bored waiting for it. But this time I did wait quite a long time, but like I said, she was on her individual journey. But yeah, your characters, and sometimes it would work if there's that instant connection and the kiss straight away, and then they work from that. And then if that works for that story, that's great. And some stories have to work up to that point.
It's true. I mean, I guess that shows the need for understanding your character's backstory as well and setting that up before you
Yeah.
get to that point so it sounds realistic. That's a great answer. Thanks, Claire. How about you, Joe?
I don't have much to add. I in my first novel, Broken Fences, my editor was on my ass about it's too late, you're waiting too long, let's get to this, let's get to the juicy bit a little earlier. But like Claire said, I had a character that just wasn't ready for it. She had her own personal stuff, she had some demons to exercise, she had stuff she was working through, and she just wasn't ready, and I was not going to push her into anything she wasn't ready for, because then it does seem contrived and weird and cringy. So I 100% am on board with what everybody's been saying. I don't have anything to add.
It sucks when somebody just has the right answer in the very beginning, right? You're just like, me too, me too. But no, you all have some great stuff to add to it, though. That I mean, that really matters, right? In those specific situations. How about you, Ursula?
So I would add too that every scene in a book has to do something for the story and for the characters. And so the placement of that scene, it doesn't necessarily matter as long, like everyone says, as long as it fits the characters and their journey, but it also has to fit kind of like the story, and it has to do something. It either advances their relationship and brings it to a point where they have to address like some kind of hidden issue. Or if it's at the end, then it's kind of like the crowning of their struggles, right? So I think that like each scene, ideally is doing something, telling us something about the characters and their journey, telling us something about the plot even. So it's also about what is the reason for that? Like if it comes early, does that mean there's going to be some other like intimacy issue that comes up between the characters? If it's coming late, is it because they worked out their issues sooner, right? So I think that it kind of goes together with that character development.
That's so true. The character development has to be believable, and depending on the trope, right? Sometimes that'll make the difference. And if it's an enemies to lovers, or friends to lovers, or I love the roommates to lovers, is one of my favorite tropes. So yeah, it does matter about the trope and everything that you blend into it. So that was a great question. I really appreciate that question, and your answers were wonderful. I have another question. We're really close to the very end. So if we could just keep our answers to a real quick answer. Anne Hart is asking, what will you be doing with your characters for you to write an interrupted first kiss? I guess that's the thing, first interrupted kisses. And we'll go backwards. We'll start with you, Ursula.
I guess I just like a little bit of interruption, just like to let the characters have one more second to think like, is this what I really want? Right? Sometimes it gives an interruption, gives the character like a chance to be like, oh, maybe this is too soon. And other times, like in my scene, it was like, no, 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 I really, really want this. And the interruption just proves, right, that they really want to do this.
Nice. Very cool. And uh, who is it? We'll go with Claire. Claire's next. Oh, I'm sorry. It's Joe. I'm so sorry, Claire.
It doesn't matter. I would say that I like I appreciate an interruption that's like an interruption by another character. I think that that's fun, and I think that it adds like, depending on who it is, like the novel that I'm working on right now, there's an interruption by one of the characters' parents, and it's kind of weird, and it makes those characters really rethink. Oh, people are going to know. People are going to see this. Is this a public thing? Is this okay for me to be doing this in public, and that kind of thing? So I always think adding another personality in there is kind of cool with the interruption, because it does add a layer of like tension with the rest of the ensemble of the cast.
That's great. I love that. How about you, Claire?
Yeah, I think an interruption, it can be something humorous. It can add something, a bit of humor. It can be to double check, is this really what we want? Or it can, again, just be to heighten the tension. Like the best things are worth waiting for. And just that final moment where you're having the will they, won't they? And just another little blip in that, just to make, make sure that the tension has built completely and the reader's just dying for them basically to get together.
I like that. The interruptions really like, I got to
Yeah,
read some more. So
exactly.
love it. Nan, how about you?
Yeah, I was going to say that more besides what it does to the characters, what is it doing to the reader, right? So you're kind of foiling it. You're making them wait, just like you're making your characters wait. And an interruption could be like, oh, it was almost there, almost had it. So it is something that keeps the pages turning too.
It's so true. So true. And Renee, what are your thoughts?
Um, I don't know if I've ever had a scene where it was an interrupted kiss, but I have had the oh my God, is she gonna kiss me? Is she gonna kiss me? When is she gonna kiss? Oh, she's so close. I can see her lips. Oh my God, and then it doesn't happen. And then it's like, shit, was that just me turned on? Or maybe I'm feeling something that the other person isn't, kind of thing. And I like using that to push along the attraction.
I love that, pushing along the attraction. I am very surprised that you've never had an uninterrupted kiss, as many kissing scenes as you've written, Renee. Just putting it out there.
Once my people hook up, they don't like to let go.
And I think that's true to life usually, right? All right.
Hopefully.
Well, thank you so much, everybody, for being here. The authors, you've done a great job. I love, it seems like for some reason this group just gels in the way that they do kissing scenes, or maybe kissing scenes gel us together. I don't know. But anyhow, thank you so much. And thanks to the audience for being here. Don't forget to go to the Bold Strokes bookstore to pick up any of these books that you liked. The link is in your in the registration form that we put out as well. But thank you so much, and I hope you have a great, wonderful rest of your day.
And thank you, Kim. Great job.
Thank you
Welcome.
very
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye.